hear that sound? That's the sound of the windfish waking up. And that's also the sound of a person getting into the Zelda series. At times I always wondered what was the one game that made me into a Zelda fan, and of course the one game I can always go back to and be able to play has always been Link's Awakening. But I can't just make a 1 hour video, no. I want to go a little bit deeper, the start to the end. Or, it probably still is going to be like a very short video knowing my ridiculous behind. Anyways, let's talk about both the DX and the remake of The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening was one of the many or so Game Boy games I owned as a kid. I owned Pokemon, Mario Land 1, Wario Land 2, and other games as a kid, but Link's Awakening was the one I can always end up remembering always playing. I had a hard time beating as well. The original game had two noticeable differences, one being that the hint beak was a slab and of course the mouse house was nowhere to be found. These are the only few things that I can remember in the game. But then as times went on, Nintendo decided to greet us with another new handheld console, one that would use color in a whole new way, introducing the Game Boy Color. This device was not only used to replay old Game Boy games in full-blown color, but it also managed to have rare game titles be played with the Game Boy Color only. Wario Land 3, Pokemon Crystal, and one other title of course being Link's Awakening DX. That's right, Link's Awakening was re-released for handheld as a new and improved Link's Awakening, not only having an added text saying New Color Dungeon on the box, but also sports a new shop that you can visit hosted by a mouse who would end up taking your picture when you end up meeting certain requirements. The DX for the game, of course, meant Director's Cut, and might as well be the definitive version at the time to play the game. This was the version I fully grew up with, and every time I had a chance to play it be released on the Game Boy Virtual Console or off the 3DS, I would always end up enjoying my time. The dungeons, the music, the gameplay, they were all just great to me. So of course when Nintendo announced a remake being made, I was super happy since this game was a massive childhood of mine. The remake of Link's Awakening was released on Nintendo Switch with some very good added quality of life controls. The OG controls are not great for some new to the gameplay today, but I myself was fine with them. So to explain a bit further, in the OG version of the game, you had only two buttons to use your items, A or B. You no longer have your sword and shield always equipped like in past Zelda games, so you do need to have your sword or shield selected to your A or B. This can be an issue for those who are new to the game, like I said, since when you first play it, you will notice you'll be switching in and out of the item select menu, and at times you will need one item to be combined with another. For example, you need both the Roc's Feather and the Pegasus Boots on both buttons so that you can be able to use them together in the means of getting a higher jump, and among other tools. I will say that I can understand the issue of these controls, but to me, I didn't really mind them. Maybe since I grew up with it, I knew how to get through it, or maybe I did not grow up with Link to the Past to be spoiled by both the sword and shield being equipped at all times. But hey, if you're not a fan of the OG controls, the remake does have you covered. For one thing, the sword and shield are always hooked up to you, and the items like the boots and power bracelet now have their own dedicated button. This is super helpful, and I will say it's an easy way for newcomers to play the game and have an easier time with the controls. I myself am up and down with the remake. For one thing, the price tag originally was $60, probably still is, I don't really know. I for one don't like that this was going for full price, mainly because there are some things in the game that do not really warrant a $60 price tag. The game has been touched up with new added warp points, the warp songs allowing you to end up selecting where you want to warp, being able to detect the seashell items thanks to a new item known as the seashell detector, and well, obviously the controls are better for those who do not like the OG controls. But aside from those points I made and the graphical updates and a few boss changes here and there, not massive changes mind you, the story and areas are relatively untouched. When I beat the demo kiosk at the Nintendo store, I was afraid that the game feels the same without any real major differences. I won't sit here and say that the remake is not worth playing, it's just not worth the price tag it was going for when it was first coming out. Aside from that, what is the story of Link's Awakening? Well, the story is fairly simple. Link was sailing the seas, and as a raging wave started to end up coming in, he was trying to steady his boat. His boat was unfortunately struck by lightning, and a young girl named Marin rescued him off the beach and took him home. Link wakes up finding himself on an island otherwise known as Koholint, or Koholint. I'm not really entirely sure how to really pronounce this island's name for the life of me. Koholint is of course not Hyrule, so it supports a lot of strange citizens. You have Terran, who's not or is related to Marin in a way. I never could figure this out. You have the owl who guides you along your journey, and you of course have Marin herself, the girl who dreams to fly just like the seagulls. You will find other fun characters such as Gordos from the Kirby series, Goombas from Mario, Chain Chomp, Shy Guys, and Kirby himself? Alright, well, these wonderful little references that Nintendo decided to slip into the game. It's funny. As a kid, I never knew that Kirby was in Eagle's Tower. I literally thought he was just some random blob. Same goes for the Gordos and the Goombas. It never did click to me when I was little. There are a total of 8 dungeons in the game, and each sporting their own theme, boss, and gimmick. The dungeons are all pretty interesting. The first few can be short, but later ones are a little bit longer. The dungeons you will visit in the game are Tail Cave, Bottle Grotto, Key Cavern, Angular's Tunnel, Catfish Mall, Face Shrine, Eagle's Tower, and Turtle Rock. And the final quote-unquote dungeon, the Windfish Egg. There is, of course, also the Color Dungeon. Now, the Color Dungeon is a unique dungeon that once beaten, you will gain access to one of 2 tunics. Red will give you more power, and blue will cut your damage in half. The dungeon also sports a nice little remix of Zelda 1's music. My favorite dungeon in the game has to be the Face Shrine, Eagle's Tower, and Angular's Tunnel for the design and look of it. Once you complete 3 dungeons, you will gain access to the Ocarina, which allows you to play 3 songs. One being Marin's song, which is the Ballad of the Windfish, Mambo's song, which warps you back to the dungeon entrance, but also warps you to Mambo Pond if you're on the OG version. If you play in the remake, Mambo's song is changed to allow you to warp anywhere where a warp portal is located, which is a lot better in the OG version, if I have to say so myself. The last song is Wart's song, because he looks like Wart, acts like Wart, and sings like Wart. His song allows you to res the dead back to life, and by the dead I literally just mean like 2 characters, the rooster and the dragon at Turtle Rock. Yeah, this song is only used twice throughout the game. The remake added an extra character into the mix, and that's Dompe the Gravekeeper. He's in the game to allow the player to create their own mini dungeon. It's a nice thing, but not the same as the mouse taking your picture. This would be a nice concept for Nintendo to revisit if they, decide to ever remake The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventure. That'd be great, you know that, guys? Just saying. I mean, I don't know why you guys haven't really remade that game yet. Now, this game is the first game to end up introducing the trading items side quest. The goal is to trade an item you've gotten to another person until you get the final reward, which could be needed in the future. This is sadly not optional. You have to do this if you want to progress through the game. Once you've gotten the Yoshi doll in the crane shop, you then trade the Yoshi doll to the mother for her son, who will then end up giving you the bow to give to Madame Bow Wow's dog, who would then proceed to give you a can of food. Give this can of food to the salesman down at the beach to receive a banana, hand the banana to Kiki the monkey, who will give you a stick, give the stick to Terra, who will then proceed to knock down the honeycomb and get chased by bees, take the honey to the panda chef in the animal village, who will then give you a pineapple, hand the pineapple to the random guy who basically said that he was going to get lost in Tall Heights. He will then give you a hibiscus that you give to the bunny girl back in Animal Village. She will give you a catfish letter to give to Dr. Wright, who will then end up giving you a broom. The old lady who is sweeping in Meba Village will then at some point move to Animal Village, but you can find her in either Meba Village or Animal Village depending on your progression of the story. After you give the broom, you end up taking the hook to the fisherman who's hiding under the bridge. You of course need the flippers from Dungeon 4 to gain access to the fisherman. The fisherman will then fish out a mermaid's bow. You then return the bow to the mermaid, who will then end up allowing Link to take a scale, use the scale on the mermaid statue, gain access to the cave that will allow you to get the final item, the magic mirror. Did you get all that? If you didn't, well, play the game yourself. This will basically allow you to end up locating invisible enemies and also unreadable text. This allows you to get the path that you need to take in the final dungeon of the game, which me as a kid never actually knew because reading was a very hard task for me. The biggest thing I can always end up remembering in Link's Awakening is its music. The music in Link's Awakening just hits a bit on the different side compared to past Zelda titles. For one thing, every dungeon and town has a different music, and the remake does a nice job combining both OG and remix songs in the dungeons as well. The Face Shrine dungeon is a very nice remix in the remake. Like, the song was already good in the OG version. But the remake makes it sound more gloomy and depressing, mainly because at some point in the story you end up finding out the truth about the island, and this song in the Face Shrine encapsulates it so much that it's like, yes, this is unfortunately the truth that you're just gonna have to face. And it's really interesting that it's called the Face Shrine because, you know, you do have to face it, and you have to face the truth. It's a very sad fact, okay? I do love this take on the Face Shrine. I will admit though, some of the pieces of the remake I'm not really a fan of. The overworld theme I can do without. The boss music sounds a bit silly, and other pieces of music just does not fit too well for me. But I won't deny that the Ballad of the Windfish in the remake was remade in the best way possible. They not only did the 8 instruments ensemble really well, but the ending credits is my favorite soundtrack in the game. It combines the OG version mix while also having that sort of Pokemon 2000 Lugia-like theme also within the mix. And that's kind of the reason as to why I can always end up saying that Link's Awakening is a big part of my childhood. It's not so much of the gameplay itself, but it's the fact that the music, the characters, the silliness, the whatever, it's just one of those Zelda titles that I can always end up being confident to play without getting bored. I don't know what it is. It just feels like a very good length of a Zelda game to just play over and over again. So when Nintendo eventually ended up making both Oracle of Ages and Seasons, and it also ended up running on the same engine as Link's Awakening for the most part, I love those games too. Both Oracle, Ages, and Seasons are one of my top favorite Zelda games because, I don't know, maybe it has to do with something that you're not in Hyrule. Librania and Holodrum are two interesting areas. The dungeon designs that you go through with both of the games are fantastic, with Seasons being more combat oriented, which makes it feel like that it's a very tough game with its puzzles, and Ages being focused on puzzle solving, which ends up having puzzles that ends up racking my brain, and also end up having a lot of conflictions when it ends up coming to Dungeon 7, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Anywho, at least I think it's Dungeon 7. I actually don't know what dungeon that is. Moving on. So if Nintendo ever decides to, at one point, remake Ages and Seasons, I'm gonna go nuts over that. I'm hoping that they do, because Ages and Seasons and Four Swords Adventure are kind of the only few games that they haven't really remade. And I know, like, you know, you got Minish Cap, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks, but can you kind of do the classic ones first before you start going into the modern era and whatnot? I'm just saying. Anywho. Now, if you made it to the end of this video, I want to say thank you for taking the time and listening to a random person on the internet gush about a Zelda title. Link's Awakening is one of the few games that made me love the action-adventure style games overall, and put my love for Zelda on the map. We did have Ocarina of Time, but I never actually fully played it, and I never end up owning Link to the Past until the GBA version. So, yeah, sadly to say, as a kid, I only had Link's Awakening that I end up owning myself. And obviously, there was nothing, I was not feeling bad about that. But you know something? I'm glad that I have played and owned this game. And glad that many others who have the remake or the OG are able to finally end up playing it now that it's on the virtual console. Anyways, I've been Pika. I don't want to take too much of your time out of your day. I'll catch you guys later and see you all in the next electrifying video. See yas.